So last week I went to Northern Kentucky to see a baby, but since I was there, I thought I would turn it into a book trip, and I went to a bunch of local bookshops, and I had never been to Northern Kentucky, and I kind of loved it. So I flew into CVG, the Cincinnati airport, but the great thing about that is that it's actually just in Kentucky, so I didn't have to enter Ohio at all, which was amazing. I guess like Northern Kentucky is kind of a place that I would just drive through. Like you pass Florence, y'all, and then you're going to like IKEA or Chicago or driving back to Massachusetts. And I had never stopped. And honestly, my assumption, so sorry to the Mount Sterling folks, but my assumption was that Northern Kentucky was like a Mount Sterling. But really, it's like an Asheville, North Carolina vibe. Portland, Maine vibe. It was really nice. There were a ton of small businesses and a bunch of like places to walk. It was wonderful. It was beautiful. Big recommend on Northern Kentucky, actually. That's crazy. But anyway, to prepare for this book trip, I went to the library and rented just the most biggest. I got 6 books, as if I was gonna read 6 books, but like honestly, I did read 4 of them. Spoilers, I read 4 books while I was there. Anyway, I tried to vlog. It's fine. I don't know. Here it is. The vlog. That's now. Right now. So I flew into Cincinnati yesterday afternoon. I'm here to see a new baby. Which is very exciting. I thought I would turn this into like a little book trip, so that's what I'm doing. I got a bunch of books from the library, and they all ended up being sad books. Apparently that's what I do. But okay, so my standard for a flight thing is like I want to start with a good book. So I grabbed all these books from the library, and the night before the flight I was like, I'm just gonna start this book to see if it's good or if I'm gonna want to be stuck with it on a plane. And it was called A Well-Trained Wife. Let me look up the author. So it's called A Well-Trained Wife, My Escape from Christian Patriarchy by Tia Levings, and I actually ended up just reading the whole thing in one night because it was really engaging. I don't know if I liked it. I'm still kind of chewing on it. I'll put a picture. Nope, over here. This is a good place for a picture of the book. I got it from the library, and it had a lot of, terrible. There was rape, abuse, like children were in danger, and I just like obviously. I feel for this woman and her family, and I'm glad she was able to escape, and I'm happy that she's written about it so other people can also escape. But I'm also just kind of like, I've read this story before. I've read all these stories before. How does this keep happening? Like, do I want to read the same story over and over again about like women being trained to be abused and then having to like escape that only after losing years of their life and having 5 children? Like, it's just, how is this still happening? Like, how often are we going to get the same book about this? I will say it was really well written. It was harrowing. If you have any issues with reading stuff like that, I don't think you should read it. But I don't know. I'm still chewing on that. My flight also got delayed, so I finished a second book at the airport, also from the library. It's called The Guest Lecture by Martin Riker, and I loved this book. I hadn't heard of it before. It was just like a random grab at the library, and I picked it up because it's about academia. Let me read you the little synopsis. In a hotel room in the middle of the night, Abby, a young feminist economist, lies awake next to her sleeping husband and daughter. Anxious that she is grossly unprepared for a talk she is presenting tomorrow on optimism and the famed economist John Maynard Keynes, she has resolved to practice by using an ancient rhetorical method to assign parts of her speech to different rooms in her house, and has brought along the comforting, albeit imaginary, companion to keep her on track, Keynes himself. So it's a woman in academia, which is something I love to read about. The whole book takes place the night before she has to give this speech. And so she's lying awake next to her family and just thinking. And through that, as like the device that the story is told, like we learn a lot about economics. She talks about work and life and like Donald Trump and politics and the end of the world and climate change, but also like being sad about the tiles in your house and all of those things, and like being a woman and friendships. And it was so good. It was so good. I was shocked that it was written by a man, not because I know men are very good at writing books. Men are great at writing books, of course. It's just, it's rare for me to read a woman so well written by a man. I really loved this book. I had never heard of it. I've never heard of anyone talking about it. If any of that is interesting to you, get a copy. Honestly, it reminded me of Sophie's World. I'll put a picture here. So Sophie's World I read when I was like 12, and it's a girl, oh god, it's a similar, it reminded me so much. In Sophie's World, she's like learning philosophy, and so the reader is also learning philosophy, but it's told as a story about learning who you are. And when I was 12, I was really impressed with Sophie's World, and I loved it. And I read it again, I think when I was like 20 or 21, and I did not find it as good as I did when I was a child. This book, The Guest Lecture, it just felt like that, a similar idea, but just so much improved, to learn about economics, kind of. It was really, really good. I really enjoyed that, and I flew through it while my flight was delayed, just waiting. The other two books I brought, I have Paul Scheer's memoir, Joyful Recollections of Trauma, and I grabbed this one. I like Paul Scheer. I listen to the How Did This Get Made podcast a lot when I'm trying to sleep. And so I thought this would be funny, and I put it in as my reading now in Goodreads, and the reviews were like, this is devastating. And so I don't know. I thought this one would be the fun one. I don't know if I want to read more childhood trauma, but we'll see. I also brought Notes on an Execution by Danya Kukafka, and I've heard great things about this. It's the story of a man who has committed crimes and is on death row, but it's told through like the women in his life. I think I have not opened this yet, and I heard great things about it and how it makes you feel about the death penalty and like people's lives and events that happen and who's to blame and if there's blame and redemption, I think. So it also seems kind of depressing, so we'll see. I don't know why I picked so many depressing books this time, but yeah, that's what I have going. I'm gonna stay on this side of the river. I'm gonna go to Newport. There's a bookstore and coffee shop called Roebling Books I'm gonna check out, and then I'm gonna go to Half Price Books. I don't think there's a Half Price Books in Massachusetts, and I love Half Price Books. At least I haven't seen it. I guess I could search for one. I drive all around. I haven't seen a Half Price Books, so I'm gonna go to a Half Price Books and buy some books. And I also want to see if they have any good records. I have gotten into physical media, and so I've been buying records, and they're very expensive on eBay, and so it might be fun to see if they have anything good. Yeah, so I thought I might give you the view out of my hotel room. There she is. We're staring at Cincinnati, I think. This is the Kentucky side. Yeah, you can see the sign maybe. It says this way to Cincinnati. Anyway, I love being in Kentucky. I love Kentucky. I'm so excited to be here. That's all I have to say about that. So I'm here on day 2 in northern Kentucky. Still really excited about being in Kentucky. It's like 8:30 right now. I thought it was like super dark and gloomy outside, but I had the blackout curtains down, and so now they're up. I'm on the floor. This is good. Is this good? I don't know. Okay, so yesterday I hit up some bookshops, and I want to talk about what I picked. Okay, so first I went to Roebling Books. And I know I'm pronouncing that wrong because I posted a picture of what I bought on Blue Sky and someone was like, but do you pronounce it right? So, Roebling Books in Covington, I think, and it was so cute. It was a little coffee shop bookstore, but like in a house kind of, so it had all the different rooms of all the different books, and they had a great selection, but it was like super curated. And I also got a praline whole milk latte, and it was delicious. I'm very picky, and it was very good. What I picked were these two books. The first is called Kentucky Y'all, and it's just a celebration of people and culture in the Bluegrass state. And I thought this would be really fun, but also it's signed by the authors, which I think is really cute. So I can read about, you know, beer cheese and all the things Kentucky people do. So that's super fun. They gave me a cute little bookmark. Yeah. Big recommend on this bookstore. I also got this book I've never heard of called I Love Dick by Kraus. Oh, that's funny. Oh, they gave me a bookmark for both. That's cute. Okay, I'm gonna read to you why I picked this book, because they had like the little staff picks section, which I do love. I always love to read those, and I always buy books from those because I'm easily influenced. But let me read to you what they said. Staff favorite, this is from Sid. It says, okay, so imagine the most embarrassing, all-consuming crush or situationship you've ever had. Then imagine writing it all down in the most honest, detailed way ever. Then imagine that at the same time, it's also massive genius referential critique on men and misogyny in the art, academia, literary space. Imagine publishing it. This is what Kraus did with I Love Dick. And I'm like, wow, okay, yeah, I'm sold. I'm excited to read this. I think this is going to be good. Apparently it's like a cult, like 90s feminism classic. I've never heard of it. I'm excited to read this. And this is what I love about like the small local bookstore. You know, you go and someone is like, well, this book you've never heard of is my favorite book. So I'm excited about that. I also saw that they had a really nice like Palestine section, and I am on the hunt for the 100 Years War in Palestine, and also Caste, which I think is about like American, you know, apartheid. But I didn't see either of those. I'm on the lookout for those. I am going to one more bookstore today, so maybe I'll find it. Next, yesterday I went to Half Price Books, which I also love. I don't think they have in Massachusetts, and I specifically wanted to look for some country music records not related to books, but I did find one. I got Randy Travis. It was so great. When I look for country music records, it's often like only Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings, which is like good. I like those two artists, and I have those two artists, but like give me some variety. So I was excited about this. And I also found the soundtrack to the Sgt. Pepper's movie, which I was kind of excited about because Sgt. Pepper's is my favorite Beatles album. I know, I like the Beatles a lot, and they have obviously a lot of good albums. Sgt. Pepper's is my favorite. I love the whole concept. I love that you can just listen to it straight through. And here's my hot take. I don't think I'm good at music, and I have bad music opinions. So here's my hot take. Is this too embarrassing to put on the internet? Okay, don't get mad, but my thing about the Beatles is that they're great musicians. They did like this great, beautiful, innovative type of music, and they're really creative, and it's really good, but they're not the best vocalists. So like I'm gonna say it. You can unfollow me. Anyone doing the Beatles, I feel like I prefer that version. So the fact that this is all covers by the Bee Gees, Alice Cooper, Peter Frampton, like I'm really, really gonna like this. Like that horrible movie that came out, the soundtrack of just the Beatles covers, I thought was brilliant and great. I don't know. I feel the same way about the Eagles. Like the Eagles are just so boring. But you get Travis Tritt doing the Eagles, and I want to listen to it. So yeah, no one's following me for my music takes. So I also got two books at Half Price Books. The first is Joan Didion, The White Album. This is just a book of essays. I have 3 Joan Didions. I know I'm gonna love her, and I haven't read a single one, but this was a beautiful copy. And the thing about Half Price Books is it's like half price, so it was like $6, which is great. And no one's ever read this book, so it's practically new for me. I'm going to read it eventually. I'll get to Joan Didion. And I also bought Consent by Vanessa Springora. So this is a book about a French woman who, when she was 13, was in a relationship with an old, gross man. And she published this very recently, and it was like shocking in France because apparently this guy is just an open pedophile. Yikes. And yeah, so I'm interested in reading this. However, I was confused when I purchased this book because I was confusing it with another book called Consent by Jill Cement. I'll put a picture up over here. In that book, she is also like a student, but she's like 18, not 13 like in this book. Wow. And she gets in a relationship with like a 40-year-old man, and they get married and they have a life, and she kind of grapples with the idea of like, I was a child but I had a happy life. Was this consensual? And I was really interested in reading that, and I thought this was that, but this is a different book also titled Consent about a different take on the topic, obviously because this girl was 13. But I'm still excited to read this. Apparently it was huge in France. Like they even changed the age of consent law. Yeah, so I'm interested in reading that. Cool. I'm gonna check my phone. Someone's texting. Nope. I don't think I need to talk about Half Price Books at the store. I think everyone's been to them. I think they're great. I really like them. You don't know what you're gonna get there. Like you can't go searching for things, but like it's fun to just stumble upon things, I think. Okay, and the last store I went to yesterday was a children's bookshop because, you know, I am here to see a baby, called the Blue Marble Books in Fort Thomas. And this was also very cute. They had a really big selection, but they also had a lot of interesting children's book I haven't seen. And room to room, just like teen to adult, they had a lot of nonfiction for teens and young adults, which I thought was really, really nice. It was really cute. Big recommend if you need to buy children's books. They didn't have what I was looking for though, because I like to buy Oliver Jeffers. It's like Here You Are or Here We. I'll put a picture of it up over here. It's this cute little book that he wrote for his newborn son about how you know, you're here and you have to look out for everybody, and everybody's gonna look out for you, and like I'll always be here for you, but there's also a huge line. It's really sweet. They didn't have that, so I got We Found a Hat by John Klassen, this book, which I gave to the baby, and is also a great sweet little book. I really, really, really like it. I also got some more books for children. This one is for a toddler. It's just things that go, and it's one of those ones where you can, oh, I don't know how to do it because I'm not a child. You do it like this. Oh, wow, okay. You do it like this. I was being too rough with it. This kind of thing, which should be fun. And then I got 2 early readers, like just, this is Mo Willems. He does the Elephant and Piggies and also the pigeon books that kids really like. And these will be good just for like more early learning to read type situations. Yeah. So yeah, those were all of my pickups. The last bookstore I want to go to is today because I'm leaving tomorrow. It's called The Hidden Chapter, and it's in Fort Thomas. It is in Fort Thomas, and they also have coffee, but they also have bourbon. So I might go later in the day and get a bourbon, or I may go in the morning and get a coffee. I'm not sure yet. Okay, also, so since I am on a reading trip, I have been reading, and I also finished my library book. So this is Paul Scheer's Joyful Recollections of Trauma. So I do like to read celebrity memoirs, but I don't want to like own them because like I'm just gonna read them one time. So this is like premium library content for me, but I don't think I liked it very much. So I think I mentioned yesterday that going into it, I didn't realize it was gonna be like actual trauma. Like the 2 pages in, his stepdad like chokes him. He gets spanked publicly at his birthday party. It's devastating. It's terrible and sad, but it was weird reading it. Not to get too personal, as someone who had a similar childhood and did the whole like therapy thing, it seems like he hasn't like dealt with it. Like he's still in the stage of like, isn't this a crazy, I don't know, people who get abused as kids, they tell the story like it's like this crazy funny thing that happened and people react with like shock and like pity, and he's still in this stage, I think, where he doesn't realize it's not funny. I don't know. It felt quite weird to read. It was like this was the early version, and maybe he would write a better book when he had, I don't know, more space. Maybe. I don't want to pathologize people. I do listen to the How Did This Get Made podcast like a lot, so I had already heard most of the funny stories, which I think made the reading experience worse because I was just like, oh, I've already heard this story, and now I'm hearing just these traumatic, like terrible childhood abuse stories I don't necessarily want to hear. Yeah, I don't think I enjoyed it, but like I don't like to rate people's memoirs. I don't know. Yeah, I wish I had brought some happier books, but no. So the next library book I have, if I have time to read a book today, is the Notes on an Execution. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe not. Yeah. Check the fit. It's like toddler. That's what I'm going for in my day-to-day life. Perfect. It's late on my last day here. I'm flying out tomorrow at 7, I think. So I have to leave Kentucky. I'm so sad about it. I love Kentucky. Oh my gosh. And northern Kentucky. I didn't even know. It's great here. This is like an amazing place. There's so much stuff to do. I went to my last bookshop this morning. It was called The Hidden Chapter. And it's in Fort. There's so many cities here. It's near Covington. But it was very cute. It was like on a little downtown area. And the thing about this bookshop, The Hidden Chapter, is that it was themed. I feel like it was dark academia themed. Like it was really beautiful, and the book selections were also kind of dark academia themed. And it's a coffee shop, and also they do alcohol. I went at 9 a.m. so I got a coffee, but the coffee was really, really good, actually. I'm very picky. I think I've already said I'm really picky about coffee in this video, but sometimes you go to a place like that and you order a $4 coffee and they hand you like a Keurig cup of coffee, and that should be illegal. But this was like a nice, wonderful drip coffee. It was really good. And I talked to the owner, and he said that it's a new bookshop that just opened in the last year. So you should check it out. It was really pretty. It was really cute. And it's like a used new mix, which I always find really interesting. And I got 2 books there. And these are my last books of the trip. I got a book I've been looking for quite a while. It's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And this is used, but it doesn't look like anyone has read this. I have really wanted to read Donna Tartt since I listened to her read the True Grit audiobook. And I think this is about academia. I don't really know, but I think it's about academia, which also makes me very interested. And also a lot of people I really agree with on books have said that this is a really good book. So I'm excited to read this. And the second book I got is like a college textbook, I think. It's 3 plays by Aristophanes. It's on brand for me not to know how to pronounce that. And I have read Lysistrata, and I was talking about it with someone the other day, which is why I wanted to buy it. And it's also got Women at the Thesmophoria and Assemblywomen, 2 plays I haven't read, and I'm really excited to actually read this. And I hope there's some good discussion on what it means. I'm excited to read this. I did want to read Lysistrata again. You know. Okay, so I did not read Notes on an Execution. Maybe I'll read it tomorrow at the airport. But so far, I think this is a very successful book trip. Like, got a lot of cool stuff, and I read most of the library books I bought, so that's exciting. We did it. I love Kentucky, so I'm so sad to leave, though. Just the way you are. Rich people got the money to hold. Mansion on the hill. Can see, I got some so end of vlog. I'm back at the end. So I think I went back to the airport and I said I was going to read Notes on an Execution, but before I do that, let me just give some honorable mentions to Northern Kentucky, which I loved. I've already talked about the bookstores. They were great, but I also went to this bar called Wunderbar, and I got a doner kebab. And Germans, if you're watching, answer this question. In Germany, they have doner kebabs, and they're delicious, and they're little sandwiches. And in America, they also have doner kebabs, but they're like pita sandwiches, and they're both good, but they're not the same. What's with that? Does anybody know why you can't get a German-style doner kebab in America? Anyway, Wunderbar. The guy was so nice. I think we talked to the owner. He made the sandwiches. He was so nice. I love being in Kentucky where people are just kind. Like, people just talk to you. They're, like, kind to you. They want to see how you're doing. I think I might be struggling with Massachusetts lifestyle more than I thought, because I also went to a yarn store. It was called Stitch Yarn Studio, and it's like your local yarn store. And I went in and I was like, I want to do this project. And the people there were so nice. The woman helped me pick a yarn. She sold me the needles. She gave me some website recommendations. Just, it's not like you walk in a store and they just ignore you to your face. Big recommend on Stitch Yarn Studio in Covington if you're like a knitter or anything. If you're doing the fiber arts. It was really nice. Last thing, I did in fact read Notes on an Execution, this book that I was talking about by Danya Kukafka. It was wonderful. It was a masterpiece. I don't know if I liked it. I don't know. I definitely recommend it. So Notes on an Execution is a story of a man who's getting executed, but it's also told from the perspective of the women in his life. So he is being executed for violence against women, but I would say this is a feminist book in that it doesn't, like, none of the violence is fetishized. Like, we don't read it. It doesn't take place it takes place in the book, but we don't have to read it in the narrative. I definitely gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I think I want to read it again, but did I like it? I want to talk about this book with spoilers. So I'm going to finish the vlog and then I'm going to do that. If you have any interest in reading this book, read it before you listen to anybody talk about it. I think that would be better. Okay. I got to the airport at like 6 a.m. for my 7:30 flight. I just read this book. I actually was able to finish it on the plane, which is a thing that has never happened to me. I always get like seasick. I've never been able to read like on the bus or the train. Maybe I've grown out of it. Maybe I'm an adult. Maybe this book was just so captivating that I had to keep reading, but I'm going to try again. Also, one last bookish thing at the airport is that CVG, the Cincinnati airport, which is actually in Kentucky, had a tiny library that was sponsored by the local public libraries, but it was like like one of those little free libraries. Like, it's, you take a book, you drop off a book just in case you forgot a book at the library. And I walked through and it was so cute. There was seating, it was like well lit, and they had the books split into sections. And the best stocked was like the kids and the teen section, which is what I think you would need at the airport because everybody else, you know, has a cell phone. But I walked through and I didn't see anything I wanted, but I loved the idea, so I didn't take anything. But when I go back, because I am going to Kentucky again this year, I'm going to bring some books to drop off because I just think that's such a lovely, wonderful idea. A little free library, but at the airport. Because, like, oh my God, what if you forgot a book for the plane? Have you seen the trend of people dogging flights? Like, absolutely not. No, I would grab any book rather than sit there quietly for 4 hours or whatever. This is the end. A 10 out of 10 book trip to Kentucky. I read 4 of my 6 library books, which is just a screaming success. And I got some really new, interesting, exciting books. I love to see it. And the coffee was really good. It was really good. Are there any coffee shops in Boston that you think are good? Because I'm not. Am I too picky? So I want to talk about Notes on an Execution. Is that good? And I think I said it was a masterpiece, and I really I really think so. The way the story is kind of trickled to the reader, it reads like a thriller, even though you know the whole time what's going to happen. And the writing was really beautiful. And something else, the characters, like there are so many characters that have point of view. So the man, Ansel, who's being executed, he always talks in first person, but every other chapter is told by a woman from his life, and they kind of talk in second person. And it's really, really interesting, but also all those individual women feel like different people. I can't imagine how hard this book was to like storyboard and keep track of. It was really, really good. Again, this is going to be spoilers, so if you're interested in at all, stop watching right now and read it and then come back. And if you want to talk to me about it in the comments, write spoiler and then comment, because I'm dying to talk about this with people. Should I start a book club? It's fine. So I think one of the goals of this book was to persuade people to be against the death penalty. Here's the thing though, I am already against the death penalty. So that aspect didn't really work for me. And also, like, this guy was just so evil that it almost convinced me the other way. Like, every time he seems intent on just doing it again. He doesn't seem to feel remorse. Like, if there was ever a case that maybe rehabilitation isn't for everybody, it was this case. So I really didn't understand that aspect of it. We get the tragic backstory for Ansel, the main character, but it was never enough to excuse murdering 4 people, actually. So maybe I'm not understanding it. Maybe it was pro-death penalty. I don't know about that. But part of that is that this book talks a lot about like single decisions, like these moments in your life where something happens or someone does something that changes the trajectory. And maybe if that didn't happen, the world would be totally different. So Ansel also has this manifesto where he's talking about like multiverse theory and how that happened and stuff. And what's interesting about all of those points in Ansel's life is that it's always a woman making a decision, and it almost felt like almost felt like the story as presented is suggesting that this horrible man killed 4 women because all of these women in his life failed him. Like, again, this is spoilers. Stop. I don't want to ruin this book for anyone. It was an amazing book. I gave it 5 stars. The backstory is that his mom was like 16. She gets impregnated right away by this abusive guy. He like shelters her on a farm and doesn't let her leave. She has another baby and she runs away. She runs away and calls the police and says, "My kids are there. He's going to kill them." And she takes off. And like, she was a child. Like, that's not her fault. She protected them by calling the police. And it's that, but every moment in his life, like his foster parents, both of them are women, you know. His pro bono lawyer is a woman. Like, the security guard who's giving him hope is a woman. And it's just like all of these women, it feels like the book is suggesting that all these women should have made different decisions in order to protect him. But it doesn't talk at all about the men in his life, like his father. What should his father have done? Maybe not starve and beat his wife and Ansel's mother. Like, the what is that called? The warden in the jail is just like, yeah, you don't get a pity party from me. Like, whatever, you killed 4 women. And I'm kind of like, yeah. But it's almost like the book is suggesting that the women should have fixed him. They should have done something different. And all of his mistakes are because, you know, the cop went to the restaurant where Ansel had finally found his family and was like, hey, he killed a bunch of 16-year-olds, so maybe don't keep him around your 16-year-old. And it's just like, she blames herself for that decision. Or when the mom, Ansel's mom, Lavender, she tries to find her 2 sons, and she speaks to one of the adoptive moms of the younger son, and that woman is like, oh, we only took the baby. And the mom is like, you couldn't take both of them? Like, she's blaming them. And it's just, I felt so strange reading this book. Because, like, it really highlights how society expects women to be caregivers and caretakers, and women should sacrifice themselves to care for men. And when they don't do that, and that man turns out to be a psychopath that kills 4 women, it's like the woman's fault. It's like how people blame things on single mothers, even though they're the parent that stayed. Do you know what I mean? I wonder if that was intentional. I wonder if the author was forcing me to reflect on the role of women in society as caregivers, and how, like, the men did nothing. The men didn't care about this guy, and he kills 4 women and blames women for every bad thing in his life. But it's like, where is your father, sir? It has to have been intentional. That's why I called it a masterpiece. It really made me think about the role of women in society, and how our sacrifices, how our expectations, like, are turned around and blamed on us when we, like, fail at that, even though it's not us. We didn't do that. And I'm mad at it, I guess. I want to read this book again. I don't think it's one of those ones I would reread. Like, I did love it. I gave it 5 stars, but it's not like a favorite book. I think one of the elements of enjoying it so much was the fact that I didn't know what was going to happen. It was kind of written like a thriller, but I do want to reread it at least one time, because maybe I missed something. Like, was it supposed to do that to me? Was that the point? But I mean, that's why I love reading books. Please, if you've read this book, what do you think? Leave me a comment. Let me know. Okay. Now the vlog is over. Thank you.